Okay, topic 8.2. This is just a little bit more. You're going to learn a few more vocabulary words. We've already talked about conditional statements, so we're going to try this first one. 21 is the legal drinking age. So if you're 21 years old, then you are of legal drinking age. So the wording can vary slightly. I'm going to underline that. You can change the way you word as long as you put it in an if-then and you're not changing the meaning of it. So the hypothesis is, remember, behind the words if, so you are 21 years old, and then the conclusion is you are of legal drinking age. Look at the next one. The converse, remember, if you are of legal drinking age, then you must be 21 years old. Just remember, you flip it. You just change the wording so that the hypothesis becomes the conclusion and the conclusion becomes the hypothesis. Now this is kind of an important word. I'm going to put a little star by it. Negation is the denial of a statement. You can think of changing it to its opposite almost. Look at the inverse. The inverse is formed by negating, there's that word, both the hypothesis and the conclusion. Let me show you how to do that. Look at example 3. The inverse of the conditional statement below: if you pass the tax test, you will graduate, then you will graduate. If you do not pass the tax test, then you will not graduate. So you change the word, the negating part, to not. So see how it says if you pass the tax test? You just insert right here the words do not. That means you've negated the hypothesis. And then here you insert then you will not graduate. See how they put it right here, I guess. Then you will, instead of graduate, you negate it and you say you will not graduate. Let me know if that doesn't make sense, but that's how you negate a statement, and that's how you write an inverse. So basically the inverse is when you take the converse statement and negate both the hypothesis and the conclusion. I think on this next page I'm going to cover up, I want you to try it before I show you the answer. I want you to try it on your own, where it says write the inverse of the following statement, determine if the inverse is true or false. If it's false, give a counterexample. Now that's a lot they're asking you to do, but let me explain. The first thing you have to do, the inverse, remember, that just means you're negating the statement. You're leaving it in the same order, but you're negating it. So if school is in session, then it is a weekday. So if school is, you're going to change that to, right, is not. Then it is, you're going to change that to is not. So let's do that. If school is not in session, then it is not a weekday. That's a false statement. Your counterexample could be something like Good Friday or summertime, or you could think of things like the Monday holidays that we get. That would be another example. Alright, a contrapositive is formed by negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion of the converse. That means you've already flipped it. So this is a little confusing, but you're going to take your conditional statement, you're going to flip it, and then you're going to negate it. So let's try that. Let me move this up. If you run a red light, then you're breaking a traffic law. A converse, remember, is when you reverse the order. So if you're breaking a traffic law, then you will be running a red light. That's just, you interchange the hypothesis and the conclusion. So a contrapositive means you're going to keep it flipped, but instead of if you are breaking, you're going to add the word not. If you are not breaking a traffic law, then you must not be running a red light. So you might want to, I think I'm going to highlight that so you'll remember that. The contrapositive is when you add these words. I'm just going to color them yellow. you're changing the converse where you reverse the hypothesis and conclusion, and then you're going to negate it, but you're going to keep it in the same wording as the converse. Alright, let's try example 6. I'm sorry, I've been watching these videos and they're kind of shaking. I don't know why it does that when I change the page, but hopefully it won't be too bad. On this example, they want you to write the contrapositive of the conditional statement below and then determine whether it's true or false. And if it's false, that's when you give a counterexample. If you ask to leave the classroom, you must present your ID. If you do not present your ID, then you cannot ask to leave the classroom. See, the contrapositive takes this statement and flips it and negates it. So see how present your ID is written first, but it says do not. I'll highlight that. And then it says you cannot ask to leave the room, and this is you can. So see how they're taking the inverse, the hypothesis, and making it a conclusion. Taking the conclusion, making it the hypothesis, and also negating it. And that's false. If you do not present your ID, then you cannot ask to leave the classroom. A counterexample is a student who asks without it. I mean, you could ask to leave, but you just didn't have your ID with you. Example 7. Let's try this one. Write a conditional statement for the statement below, and then write all three of them: the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. Juniors must pass the TAKS test in order to graduate. So your conditional statement, remember, is when you add the words if and the words then to your statement. You've put it in a conditional form. If you are a junior, then you must pass the TAKS test to graduate. The converse of that, if you need to pass the TAKS test to graduate, then you must be a junior. See how the converse just took this statement? It's still in an if-then, but it also reversed the order. So it flip-flopped the hypothesis and the conclusion. Hi. Okay. For the inverse, you have to take the original conditional statement and add the word not. So if you are not a junior, then you do not have to pass the TAKS test. Remember that word negate? This is negating the conditional statement. So you go back to your original statement and negate the hypothesis and the conclusion. If you write your contrapositive, you're going to negate the converse statement. See how you still have the words do not and not, but it flipped this one. So it almost looks like you're writing the same thing, but you're not. You're reversing the hypothesis and the conclusion. Let me know if you still have questions about that.